tell anybody who adjusted that. So we want to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Board of Nursing, and we would like to start with a word of prayer or a moment of silence. And I'd ask Ms. Jackson if she would lead us in prayer.
Good morning, everyone. If you will, please bow your heads. Most gracious Father, thank you for another blessed day. Thank you for all the abundance of wonderful things that you've done for everyone in the world. Protect those that need to be protected, which we all actually do. Father, help us as a panel to understand what will be set before us. Help us to make the right judgments. Forgive those that have committed these sins and help rectify and have them to understand what the proper thing is to do. Guide our hands and our minds in making the correct and honest decisions. Most gracious Father, please note that we need to make sure that the work we do speak for us. In Jesus' name I do pray, amen.
Thank you. So we're ready to go on record. And I'd like to take just a minute to speak to those who are joining us online as well as those in the room and give you a little information about the board. The board of directors is comprised of 13 members. 7 of the members are registered nurses. 4 are LPNs. 1 is a community representative and the other is a physician member. The panel today is made up of 4 of those board members. 3 of us will serve on each panel, and then there will be 1 alternate. And the alternate will not participate in the deliberations or the discussion or the decision. So I want to just introduce everyone, starting to my right, Ms. Shirley Jackson. She is an LPN member. Mary Stewart, I'm an RN member. Janie Clanton is an RN member, and Mr. Jeremy Cummins is an LPN member. And then immediately to my left, we are privileged to have the Honorable Edward Wiggins Jr., who is the Special Assistant to the Attorney General, who will serve as our hearing officer today. Now we'll turn it over to him.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Edward Wiggins. I'll be serving as the hearing officer for today. We do have a few, I guess, preliminary things we need to get out in the open. We will try to have as best we can an orderly hearing. We typically will begin with opening statements. Each side will have an opportunity to present their argument. We will allow for cross-examination as well as rebuttal if it is necessary. At the conclusion of the presentation of both sides, we will have closing statements. The board will make findings of fact and conclusions of law and will render its decision in the matter. A copy of that, which will be sent to the applicant within 30 to 45 days. These hearings are open to the public. I will note for the record that there is a quorum present. At this time, we have before the board license number R892414, which is a restoration. Is the licensee present?
Yeah.
Thank you. At this time, I will ask that the court reporter swear in any witnesses that we have.
Can you raise your right hand? You solemnly swear that the testimony.
I do.
Council, do you have any preliminary matters from the state?
Other than the admission of the exhibits, which the petitioner has already been given a copy of, I would like those admitted into evidence.
Do you have any objection?
I do not.
Okay. Ms. Hill, are you represented by counsel?
Do not.
You understand you have the right to be represented by counsel?
I do.
You understand you have the right to have witnesses testify on your behalf?
I do.
Further understanding you have the right to have subpoenas issued on your behalf by the board.
I do.
And at this time, you're prepared to go forward with this hearing.
I do.
If there are no objection to those exhibits, we'll have those exhibits admitted.
And that's inclusive of her petition application as well. Thank you.
That's correct. At this time, we will begin with opening statements. Ms. Hill, you may proceed. Now,
Okay, I don't have one prepared, but as you all know, October the 8th, I had my appeals hearing, and regardless of what actually happened, the attorney still went with her findings and said there wasn't enough evidence to say that I was innocent. So because there were no video cameras there, they couldn't prove that, who it was, because it wasn't my usual workstation computer. And that was, I believe, December 26, 2017. And so she went ahead and said, found guilty. So now I'm just applying for my restoration. I have 5 affidavits I got from different people I've worked with and people that I know, and that's what I put forward, and also a CE course that I took on HIPAA.
counsel,
Just briefly, for the record, petitioner was found guilty of assessing without authorization the prescription monitoring profile of another employee's relative. This conduct was ruled to be unprofessional conduct pursuant to Rule 1.2N, which provides the petitioner violated confidentiality of information or knowledge concerning a patient. The petitioner was at the time employed at St. Dominic Hospital on December 27, 2017, and she was terminated on January 9th, 2018. Factual for the record. That's all I have.
all right, thank you, counsel. Ms. Hill, since this is a restoration, you will go first and have the opportunity to share with the board why you think your license privileges should be restored. You may go ahead.
Okay. I've always practiced with extreme caution to each individual patient care. I've always taken care of my patients to the best of my ability. Never intentionally tried to harm anybody or been negligent to any patient's care. And I love what I do. I feel like it's my, God-given talent in my career.
Counsel, you have some questions, Ms. Hill?
Just for the record, so we can establish one this morning, may I proceed?
You may.
Ms. Hill, where did you attend nursing school?
At University of Mississippi Medical Center.
You're gonna probably have to speak louder because I
Okay.
can hardly hear most of the.
I'm sorry. University of Mississippi Medical Center
When did you graduate?
in August of 2012.
For the record, is your address still 534 McCullough Road in Louisville, Mississippi?
It is not, and I have updated it also online.
Could you please, for the record, give us that information? now?
Yes, ma'am. It's 103 Locksley Way,
Spell that, please.
Locksley Way, apartment 77, Starkville, Mississippi, 39759.
And you did say you did upgrade that.
I did.
When did you do that?
I don't have my phone with me, so I don't know the exact day. Recently, as soon as I moved in there. And I also emailed the board members as well.
Okay. Thank
Yes, ma'am.
When were you first licensed as a nurse?
In 2012.
Now, you are aware that you basically heard my opening statement and that you were ruled by the panel at the hearing that you violated Rule 1.2 dealing with the assessing without authorization an individual's PNP.
Yes, ma'am.
And as a result, you were terminated on January 9th, 2018.
Right. The individual who was accessed was actually the husband of an employee And she was in the middle of a divorce, divorcing her husband for a brother-in-law. She was in a child custody battle, and I couldn't prove that it was her because it was at my usual workstation and there are no video cameras. So I honestly have no way of proving.
Well, you are aware that factually, those facts regarding that hearing have already been established by.
Yes, ma'am, I'm aware.
Okay. With regard to you're working, if you would look at your petition for restoration. Are these all of the places where you've worked since your license was revoked?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you aware that you're subject to the board's discretion on the question of your petition for restoration?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the
Yes, ma'am.
question.
No problem. You understand that the board will determine based on what you provide today, whether or not your license should be restored.
Yes, ma'am.
With regards to your continuing education, how many hours of nursing are you supposed to have a year if you had obtained your license?
Per year,
Yeah, per year.
I believe it was 2 or 4.
Have you kept up with your CEs for nursing? So what you presented on your application was just 1 hour dealing with a HIPAA. So have you taken more?
No, ma'am, not last year.
Not so since you've been revoked, that 1 hour is the only thing you received.
Yes, ma'am, since I've been revoked.
So if the board needed you to take additional CEs to be up to par, you'd be willing to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you aware, on your application, you indicate that your certificate was for 1 to 2 hours, but the certificate indicates it's 1 hour of CE. You supplied a certification, and your certification says that it was for 1 hour.
Yes, ma'am. I see that.
Are you currently employed now?
I'm not. I've been working side jobs like cleaning houses and things like that to make ends meet.
So you don't, basically, again, what you've represented on your restoration is the employment since your revocation
Yes, ma'am.
and permanently no employment. Let's talk about your affidavits, please. If you
Okay.
could look at those.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a couple of questions about that.
Okay.
You are aware that you presented 5 affidavits, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And 3 of those had to be from a licensee in good standing with the board.
Yes, ma'am.
So these individuals, based on your word that this is true and accurate, are in good standing with the board.
Yes, ma'am.
And that whatever they present here, the board would be able to validate that if they call these individuals.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask you about Megan Richardson.
Okay.
I believe she's stated as an assistant research professor.
Yes.
How do you know her?
I've known her for a long time. We went to college together, knew each other in high school. We've known each other for years.
If you would look on the second page of her affidavit, there's a statement that said that your computer was used by a coworker. So did you communicate that to her?
I just told her the accusations.
Okay, so you didn't tell her that you had been found guilty of
I
that?
did. I did tell her that I was found guilty.
I just wanted to make sure for the record.
Yes, ma'am.
And you do understand that the board did find you guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I understand we're having some trouble hearing. I'm gonna ask that you speak a little closer to your microphone. And
Can you hear
council,
me?
You may just have to speak a little louder.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm competing with the air, but I'll do the best that I can this morning, so I won't be appearing to shout at you all.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, I think my first question was dealing with Megan Richardson.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
answered that question. I'd like to ask you about Craig Cox. He is a registered nurse.
Yes.
And how do you know him?
Through when I was in college, I worked my first job as an ER technician at Oktibbeha County Hospital, and that's how I know him from working with him.
Okay, when you first, that's not listed. Are you aware that that's not listed on your employment history? Oktibbeha County, a regional medical center.
Yes, that was when I was still in college, like before I ever got my biological sciences degree, not even before nursing school.
Okay, I just need to clarify that because he did represent that you all were ER techs at that
Yes,
facility.
yes, and that's been years ago.
And with regard to his statement, did you also advise Mr. Cox that you were actually found guilty?
I did.
Okay, and you do note that he says that you were accused of assessing the PMP.
Right, I do see that.
Now, you do agree with me that you have to take responsibility.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, based on your restoration application.
I understand.
How do you know Tracy Hannon?
We have known each other since we were 4 years old, a lifelong friend.
And she's a photographer.
She is.
And if you would look on her application, it says on page 2, she states that you were falsely accused of looking up a patient's PMP.
Right,
So you do understand the final orders say that you,
I do.
okay,
And they all know too.
okay. What about Miss Amanda Jones Cumberland? She's a registered nurse. How do you know her?
I worked with her at, she was my supervisor at Winston Medical Center.
And you would agree with me that her statement was that it was maintained by someone else, and it suggested that you didn't know the name of the patient. She put that on there. So where did she get that information from on the second page of her affidavit?
I'm looking for it.
It's at the top when it asked, it is my understanding that the applicant's license was revoked, and she gave that reason.
Yeah, I just told her the accusations, the findings that I was found guilty and what actually happened.
All right. What about Amy Haskett? She's a registered nurse.
I worked with her with Dr. Philip Lay, surgical oncology.
You know,
Merit Health now. He was with St. Dominic's when I worked for him.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And again, on page 2 of her affidavit, she states that you were accused of looking up a co-worker's husband on the PMP system. So you are aware, again, that the 2 final orders found that you were actually.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to put that into the record. And you do know today that the burden of proof is on you to establish that your license should be restored.
Yes, ma'am.
Please advise the board why you feel you're competent to return to nursing under the circumstances.
I'm a caring, loving person. I've always taken care of each of my patients, like I said earlier, according to their specific individual care plan. I'm always try to be a great patient advocate. Even when doctors don't see the need for certain referrals, I try my best to be a good patient advocate. And it's my lifelong dream. It's my career, the way I take care of my children.
And basically, you are aware that, again, it's in the board's discretion and under what circumstances
Yes, ma'am.
that your license could be restored.
Yes, ma'am.
I have no further questions. I tender to the panel.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Hill from the board panel?
Hi, thanks for coming. I have a few questions. So tell me what HIPAA means.
violating a patient's right to privacy, whether it be accessing any of their health information, like their diagnosis, their any medications they're taking, anything about their.
So why is that a problem?
Because unless you're a part of that patient's care, then it's their right as an individual and as a patient legally for privacy. And that's not to be shared with anybody else unless you're in their care, unless they're under your care.
Okay, so can you speak just a little bit to when a nurse is held to an ethical standard, which is often not necessarily a legal standard, but an ethical standard of protecting patients' privacy? I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that as a Christian, personally, I'm not going to say everybody is a Christian, but I see it as immoral as it is. It's not right. And just as an individual, not even as a nurse, you should never violate somebody's privacy.
Okay, and last question. So if you were to talk to a student or a new nurse, what would you advise them to prevent them from getting in the same situation that you're in?
I would definitely say to be overly cautious. Make sure you're tapping in and out of your computer every single time you go in a room. Don't minimize the screen. Even if you're just going to be going for a few minutes to go talk to a patient, give them an injection. Make sure your papers are covered when you're scribing a chart. Sending in prescriptions, especially when you're in close quarters with other nurses. But anyways, to do that, even when you're not in close quarters with other nurses, because family members can look over, see somebody else's diagnosis or their care plan. And that would be my best advice, just to be overly cautious.
Thank you. I don't have.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board panel? Council?
I have just one question that I wanted to ask before we do closing.
Sure.
Would you offer any rehabilitation to the board today? Any evidence you have as far as rehabilitation for the offense that you were accused of, or actually that you were found guilty of?
What do you mean by rehabilitation?
What have you done? Do you think that taking the one course was sufficient for the rehabilitation?
I felt like it was because it was so thorough. And I would be glad to take more courses, but I felt like they would be repetitive because it covered every single aspect.
Okay,
It did.
that's all I have for questions.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board panel based on that? If not, Ms. Hill, if you have a closing statement, you may proceed.
I just hope and pray that everybody will take into consideration everything I've said today.
Thank you. Council?
Just a few things I'd like to bring to the panel. While there are several factors the hearing panel can consider to restore petitioner's license to practice, I asked the panel to review whether petitioner has completed enough hours with regard to the offense for which she was found guilty, with regards to the nature, with your expertise dealing with the aspects of the CE in this area. And then I also want to, with the statement that there is an acceptance of responsibility here, I would like the board to consider that. I do know that I had a concern about the affidavits and about the statements that were made by the individuals, because it raised a flag to me dealing with what was actually stated regarding the communication between the petitioner and the individuals filling out the affidavit. I asked the board to review the areas I referenced when you all deliberate. And I do know that under Rule 1.12E, you have the right to restore with recommendations if you are inclined to do that. But I ask that you take a look at what you can do, and based on my concerns and what has been introduced here regarding rehabilitation, the amount of CE in this area, and the nature of the offense that was actually, she was found guilty of, whether or not she fulfills the requirements for restoration. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, counsel. At this time, I will entertain a motion for the board to go into closed session regarding whether executive session is necessary.
To closed session to determine if executive session is required.
Not second.
Been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. At this time, entertain a motion for the board to enter executive session for deliberation regarding license number R892414.
I move that the panel go into executive session to consider and deliberate the matter in license R892414.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. The board will now exit to executive session. We will return with a decision in this matter shortly. All right, thank you everyone for your patience. We are back on the record. Entertain a motion for the board panel to return to regular session.
I make the motion that the board return to regular session.
It has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The board is now back in regular session. Following deliberation on license number R892414, the board panel renders the following: reinstatement after education to include a course on ethics. Are there any questions?
I have a comment. Just for clarification, the alternate in this panel was Mr. Jeremy Cummins. That needs to be on the record.
All right, thank you. Anything further? Not Ms. Hill. Paige, you are excused.
Thank you.
License number R 873 958. The licensee present. Ask you to move that closer to that mic or move it closer to you so we can be sure to hear you.
Okay, I am.
Please state your name.
Amber Spears Knight.
Are you represented by counsel, Ms. Knight?
No, sir.
Do you have any witnesses with you today?
No, sir.
I ask that the court reporter swear in the witnesses.
Y'all raise your right hand, please.
I do.
I do. I do.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, you understand you have the right to be represented by counsel?
I do. I do.
You understand you have the right to have witnesses presented on your behalf?
I do.
Further understand you have the right to have subpoenas issued by the board on your behalf.
I do.
And it is your intention to proceed with this matter without counsel.
Yes, sir.
We will begin this morning with opening statements from both sides. We will allow for questions of the witnesses, as well as cross-examination and redirect if needed. Once we have the presentation of both sides, we will have closing statements. The board will make findings of fact and conclusions of law. Its decision, a copy of which will be forwarded within 30 to 45 days. I'll note for the record that there is a quorum present. Council, do we have any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. I would request at this time on behalf of the Mississippi Board of Nursing that previously marked exhibits B1 through B9 be entered into evidence as the state's exhibits.
Ms. Knight, do you have any objection to those exhibits?
From what I see so far, it's basically their version of what happened. So I don't know if that question, if I agree with it.
Have you ever had an opportunity to review the exhibits?
No, this is the first time I'm seeing this. Other than the certified letter that I received from the Arkansas State Board and then the Mississippi Board of Nursing, just with the straight complaint being charged. But as far as the other documents, no, sir.
Okay, well, why don't we allow you a few minutes to review those, see if you have any objection to them.
Okay.
Mr. Wiggins, if I would just may note for the record, there was never a request by the respondent to these exhibits under the Mississippi Board of Nursing's rules. She is required to make such a request no less than 5 days prior to a hearing, or else they are exempt from any disclosure or production.
Thank you, counsel. That is noted for the record.
Okay, I'll review them as best as I could.
Do you have any objection?
Yes, I do. As far as the complaint against me that was made by the actual hospital.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand
Okay.
what your objection is.
The complaint that was made by Cornerstone Hospital, who I was a contract travel nurse through Medical Solutions, said that a family member complained that I seemed high or on drugs, and that other employees noticed me walking down the hall with my eyes like halfway open. That is not true, but
Okay, we're not getting into the merits or the veracity of the complaint.
okay.
And I asked about any objection to the exhibits. We're just trying to determine if there was something in there that you did not think needed to be in there. And if so, what was the reasoning for that?
I guess everything's here is text messages and emails and so forth.
The exhibits will be admitted. At this time, we will begin with opening statements. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Wiggins. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Minton. I'm with the Mississippi Attorney General's office. It's my pleasure to once again represent the Mississippi Board of Nursing before you. We're here today regarding a complaint for suspension of license of Ms. Amber Knight. The complaint alleges that Ms. Knight has been suspended and or has lost her nursing privileges in another jurisdiction, in this case, Arkansas, and the evidence will support that. This matter is not about what was alleged to have happened in Arkansas. This matter is about whether or not she is actually suspended or has lost privileges in another state, and that will be found to be undisputed by the evidence that will be presented today. Furthermore, the evidence will presented to the court will also illustrate that had this occurred in the state of Mississippi, she would have also been subject to loss of license under our state laws and regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Knight, if you have an opening statement, you may make it at this time.
Well, just like I said earlier, on the night of November 19, I was given nighttime medicines, and the patient's sister requested that he not be disturbed during the night unless she called for us. And so I then instructed the CNA not to disturb the patient. At approximately 3 a.m., I heard, loud voices in the hallway, and the sister had come out and was complaining to the charge nurse. And I went over there and defended her. So at the change of shift, I gave a report. And then I was approached by the day charge nurse regarding taking a test. And I then contacted my recruiter, and they wanted me to take their test at their facility. And I contacted my recruiter, and they're based out of Omaha, Nebraska. He told me to just wait there until he could find out what he needed to do, because he was new with the company. So, and I basically knew that I had to do the test through the Medical Solutions because they were my employer. And I left and went and waited in my car. And I did not hear back from him for approximately 3 to 4 hours. So
Ms. Mike, let me stop you there. This is just about an opening. If you wanted to give one, it sounds like you're kind of getting over into your version of the argument.
Mhm.
So we can reserve that until such time as I notify that you will proceed with that. For now, council will move to the argument from the state.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to call Ms. Sharice Redmond to the stand to testify on behalf of Mississippi Board of Nursing. Ms. Redmond, if you would please state your name, county of residence, and current place of employment for the record.
Yes, my name is Sharice Redmond. I'm a resident of Madison County and I work here at the Mississippi Board of Nursing.
And what is your position with Mississippi Board of Nursing?
I am an investigator assigned to the investigations division
And how long have you worked for MBN?
for 3 years.
And during that time, have you participated in investigations that result in the summary suspension of licenses?
Yes,
And is it part of your duties with the board to investigate complaints received related to individuals licensed by the board to practice in this state?
yes.
And if you would just kind of give us a brief summary of kind of what an investigation details in your own words.
The investigation in this case was an out-of-state action. So I would contact the state agency as well as the facilities and to gather the information related to the allegation or complaint.
And how did the Mississippi Board of Nursing come to learn about this specific allegation?
For this one, both Medical Solutions and the Arkansas State Board of Nursing provided information related to the allegations.
And after you received that information from both Medical Solutions, who I believe was her employer, and the Arkansas Board of Nursing, did you personally conduct an investigation into those allegations?
Yes.
And what sort of information did you gather?
The facility investigation as far as the details about what occurred. The Arkansas State Board of Nursing board orders that was issued to Ms. Knight. And other documents.
And what was the ultimate determination of your investigation?
Determined that the Arkansas Board had issued her a cease and desist order.
And what,
Suspension of license.
so what was the effect of that cease and desist order, just basically?
For her to stop practicing legally in the state of Arkansas.
And do you recall what the basis of that suspension was?
It was related to Ms. Knight. It was for cause drug screen, and Ms. Knight was observed by the Cornerstone staff appearing to be under the influence, and she refused to submit to the drug screen.
Now, I've placed before you what has been previously been marked and entered into evidence as exhibits B1 through B9. If I could ask you to please turn to B7. And when you get there, if you could just identify that document.
B7 is the Arkansas State Board of Nursing cease and desist board orders.
And you obtained that in your role as an investigator for the Mississippi Board of Nursing
Yes.
directly from the Arkansas Board of Nursing?
Yes,
And that is kept in you obtained that in the regular course and scope of your employment with the Mississippi Board of Nursing. And it is kept in the ordinary course of business as a business record of the Mississippi Board of Nursing.
that's correct. Yes.
And now, does this document fully outline the reasons for her cease and desist suspension in Arkansas?
Yes.
Now, regarding that reasoning, what you just testified was I believe the failure to participate in a for cause or reasonable suspicion drug screen. Would that ground itself, absent any action in Arkansas, be grounds for suspension in the state of Mississippi?
Yes.
And do you know what
Under the-
authority that comes under?
Yes, under the Mississippi Administrative Code, independent of suspension. Let's see, in the Mississippi Administrative Code 2820 R 1.2 includes a refusal to submit to a drug screen in the grounds of suspension or unprofessional behavior, which is also under 73-15-29.
After you completed your investigation here on behalf of the Mississippi Board of Nursing, was a complaint filed against Ms. Knight for the suspension of her license in the state of Mississippi?
Yes,
I'm going to ask you to now turn to Exhibit D5, previously entered into evidence, and identify that document.
B5 is a notice of hearing. Signed addressed to Ms. Amber Knight at 222 Charles Stafford Road, Seminary, Mississippi, 39479.
Is there any accompanying documents with that notice of hearing?
Yes, it's a complaint. Also addressed to Ms. Amber Knight, the same address.
And if you could just draw your attention, excuse me, to the complaint itself. What are the grounds for Ms. Knight? What is the grounds for the request for suspension of Ms. Knight's license?
The respondent refused to drug screen. Let's see.
And we're specifically to charge one.
Okay, the charge one, administrative code, section 73-15-29, 1D, that the respondent had a license privilege practice as a registered nurse and a license suspended or revoked in a jurisdiction and any other jurisdiction. So,
And is that what occurred in this case?
yes,
And so under that statutory code is what has happened in Arkansas, the suspension of her license. Without taking into consideration the actions that led to it, but the suspension of her license grounds on its own for this board to suspend Ms. Knight's license today.
yes.
I have no further questions. I tender the witness to Ms. Knight.
All right, thank you, counsel. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions for this witness?
You said that, so as of today, they have revoked my privilege to practice officially revoked it to practice in Arkansas.
It's the cease and desist order that was received that she mentioned earlier from the Arkansas State Board. That is what that document instructs.
Do you see that in your exhibits, Ms. Knight?
I did. I received it almost 2 years after the incident.
Do you have any further questions for this witness?
No.
Any questions for this witness from the board, Pam?
Hi, Ms. Knight, are you working? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, thank you.
Anything further from this witness, counsel?
Not from this revenue. Say it. State has no further witnesses.
Further from the state at this time?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Knight,
Reserve my right to cross-examine.
Ms. Knight, you may share with the board your response to the complaint submitted against you.
As I was saying earlier, the family member made a complaint against me saying that I seemed high or on drugs. I believe that was because I defended the CNA. She was attempting, I know, to eventually get her fired.
Objection, irrelevant to these proceedings. This matter is not about the actions. This is about the fact that there is a suspension order against Ms. Knight in another jurisdiction.
Objection sustained. Ms. Knight, you can proceed.
What I mean, what can I say other than I'm not guilty? I don't know what y'all want me to tell you.
Well,
This facility wanted me to take a four-cause drug screen. They were not my employer. I was a contract employee. I was instructed by Lucas Adams, my recruiter, to wait until I heard back from him for him to contact Human Resources and see exactly what I needed to do. So I waited on the floor for about 30 minutes and then I went and left the floor. They rent out the third floor of the Baptist hospital there. And I went down the elevator and left the hospital, but I was in the parking garage till approximately 11 or 12 waiting for a response. And at 1:22, I believe that afternoon, which I was already gone and home asleep, I received an email from the recruiter saying the facility had already canceled my contract because I would not take their test through their hospital lab.
you have anything further?
No, I would have, if I had been gotten in touch with, I would have taken, the one through my employer, which is Medical Solutions. But it had to be taken within so long. And that was that. So, and this was in November of 2019, and I received the complaint from the cease and desist from the Board of Nursing in Arkansas at the middle of October of 2021, almost 2 years after the incident.
So are you saying you refused the drug screen because you're not an employee of this facility?
I was a contract employee. I was an employee by Medical Solutions. So they were my actual employer.
Okay.
So I'd have to take a drug screen for them at an outside facility. I could not do the one for the Cornerstone Hospital, their drug screen there. And that's what they were requesting me to do. And that's what I was trying to verify with them, that I had to contact him and he would let me know what to do. So,
what happened next?
well, I waited on the floor for about 30 minutes and didn't hear anything. So I went to my car in the parking garage and I left the floor and I waited 3 to 4 hours for a response. And I proceeded to go home. I had to work. I thought I had to work again that night, but they canceled my contract because I would not take their drug screen. The hospitals.
Okay. Do you have anything further you want to share with the board now?
I don't know. Just basically, that's it. That's pretty much it. So.
Okay. Now, Mr. Minton may have some questions for you.
Mhm.
And the board panel may have some questions for you as well. We're going to start with Mr. Minton.
Thank you, Mr. Wickett. Ms. Knight, if I could ask you to take a look at what B7, the cease and desist order.
Okay.
Now, you just testified that you received that sometime in mid-October of 2021, correct?
I did.
This is dated October 7th, so within a week or so of that date.
I did.
approximately. On the very last page of this, so when you received this, let me back up. When you received this, did you agree with the findings of the Arkansas Board of Nursing? That you had violated their laws and regulations in regards to refusing a drug screen?
Let's see. I don't believe this is the same document I received. I have it here. What were you, I'm sorry, you were asking me if I agree.
You testified, you received this document
Mhm.
in the mail sometime in mid-October 2021.
Yes. Mhm.
When you received it and had a chance to review it, did you agree with the holdings of the Arkansas Board of Nursing that you had violated their laws by refusing a drug screen and therefore you were no longer allowed to practice in the state of Arkansas? Did you agree with their position?
Like I said, I thought I was not allowed to take that hospitals.
I'm not asking about the night of the incident. I'm asking when you received this and reviewed it, did you agree with what the State Board of Nursing in Arkansas said, its findings? Did you agree with this? Or did you think they were wrong?
I agreed that I would not do the for-cause drug screen for that hospital facility. But as far as the other,
Do you agree that Arkansas, did you disagree that they suspended your privileges in the state?
I did.
On the last page, it offers, if you, at the very beginning, it offers you an opportunity to request a hearing. That's the third page of B7.
Mhm.
And it offers you an opportunity to go before that board. I would imagine to do what you're doing here today, appeal or defend yourself. Did you take advantage of that opportunity?
I did not.
So you never disputed Arkansas's findings that you refused a reasonable suspicion drug screen and that you were subject to a loss of nursing privileges in the state of Arkansas.
No, I never disputed that. But when I received the cease and desist, I understood it, I was to not contact them. I do see this on the document now, but I understood that, I was no longer to practice in their state, and that was final.
Just to clarify, you received this, disagreed with it, but did not take advantage of what we'll call their appeal process.
No.
Thank you. If I could turn your attention to what has previously been entered into evidence and is labeled as B8. And specifically, beginning on page 5, there's a document labeled consultant agreement from Medical Solutions. You testified Medical Solutions was your employer?
Yes, sir.
Or at the very least, the placement agency.
Yes, sir.
And in this document, Ms. Knight, if you could, in terms of these definitions, you were referred to as the traveler. If you see it right under employment agreement, it states Amber Spears Knight, herein referred to as traveler. So
Okay.
throughout this document, do you agree with that? Throughout this document, you are, whenever it references traveler, it's referencing you.
Yes.
If I could have you turn to that document to the third page, page 3 of 4. Subpart 11, if you could read, and I know it might be difficult to read because, little fuzzy, but if you could, if you could read through that and for the record, subpart 11 at the very top of the document.
Okay. Is that the traveler will comply with all policies and procedures of the client, in parentheses, including meals and rest break policies, into parentheses, while providing services to client. Traveler shall promptly notify Medical Solution and traveler's career consultant of any of the following. Number one, being asked to perform tasks beyond scope of training. Number two, a work environment that, I'm sorry, it's very small,
I understand.
that possesses utility.
I understand it's a night.
Okay.
That's quite all right. You don't have to complete it, but
Mhm.
when reviewing that, that subpart of your consultant agreement, does that not provide that you are to follow the policies and procedures of the client, which is defined as the hospital you're placed at in this document?
That appears to be what it says, but it's regarding meal breaks and
For the record, it is not regarding meal breaks and rest. It says including meal breaks and rest. So it could be read as being much more comprehensive than just what time you can go to lunch.
it also has tasks that are out of my scope of practice.
Would it not be the normal policy of a hospital to require its employees, including nurses, to submit to reasonable and or for cause drug screens from time to time?
No, that would be appropriate,
So
but I understood that I had to do it through my employer.
yet this document indicates that you are to follow and abide by all policies of the client, which is the hospital.
I assume so. It's doesn't, to me, it doesn't specify, it's not just specified to drug screening. And I did not have this document with me at the time of the incident. I was instructed by my recruiter to wait.
I have no further questions from this night. Tender to the sub panel.
Thank you, council. Any questions from the board panel, Ms. Mike?
You said that you had waited to hear back from your
Recruiter, Lucas Adams.
get to a drug test. Did they ever assign you a drug test?
They did, but my contract had already been canceled and it had been too long for me to, at that point, I had to take it within so long. And, I woke up that evening and saw that I had an email that afternoon. So
How long did you travel as a travel nurse?
I was employed with them for 3 weeks. I've done 4 other assignments.
But I saw where you initially got your RN license in 2006.
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
I guess my question is, how long have you been traveling altogether?
Intermittently, I've taken, let's see, 4 assignments for approximately 13 weeks, 8 to 13 weeks each.
Are you working now?
I am. I work with Help at Home.
Home health agency?
Yes, I take care of developmentally delayed adolescents that require critical care, like they're on ventilators, trachs, things of that nature.
So you're working now as a registered nurse?
Yes,
Okay. And you've been doing this particular job for how long?
this patient assigned, my last patient passed away, so I got a new assignment, and my first day with her was yesterday. So, but I've been with them 4 years now.
4 years.
Mhm.
I don't have.
Anything further from the floor, Pam?
If you were innocent, why didn't you submit to a drug screen?
Well, at that time, it was already too late. I mean, it was that evening there. I mean, I couldn't go anywhere.
If you were innocent, when the hospital asked you to do a drug screen, why didn't you submit to a drug screen?
Because I was at the understanding that I was to wait, and that they were Medical Solutions was my employer, and then I was not to take their drug screen.
Were you given instruction before your employment with Medical Solutions to do so?
That's what I've learned through traveling. That's what I've always heard. And Lucas Adams did tell me to wait, and that he believed that I had to take one in an outside facility for their company because they were my employer.
So you felt no need to clear your name of the accusations being made at the time.
Well,
You could take 6 drug screens. I would think that you'd be compelled to clear your name of the accusations at the time.
I was, but I wasn't, supposed, I was of the understanding that I was not supposed to take the facility that I was contracted to work at, drug screen, that I would need to go to a separate outside facility for it.
And again, I'm gonna ask one more time, where did you get that instruction from? Prior to reaching out to your recruiter, where did you get those instructions from?
I've just known that through my different travel assignments. Hearing that from other nurses and such.
I'm sorry, did your recruiter, did you think to have him validate that with us, to send a letter? That was what he wanted you to do?
No, like I said, this was almost 2 years
I understand.
after the incident. So at that point, I was even shocked that I received anything. So at that point, I don't even know if he's still employed by the same company.
So with your consultant agreement with Medical Solutions, did the recruiter go over the document with you?
I was sent it via email, and my contract, I signed it via DocuSign on the computer. But he did not specifically read through the actual document with me.
Did you have any questions to the recruiter regarding the language in the agreement?
I did not. I didn't ask him anything.
The employment that you have now, do you have an agreement with them?
Yes. Mhm.
How did you get that employment?
How did I get that employment? I returned home and applied, and I was employed by them.
Where is that located?
The main base is here in Jackson, but I work from the Hattiesburg office, and I work actually in the patient's home with the patient.
So you just deal with Mississippi patients?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
So at this time, your Arkansas license is still subject to the cease and desist.
Okay.
I'm asking.
I'm assuming so. I'm assuming that because I missed that period of, so many days to dispute it, I'm assuming that it will not be reinstated, so.
Do you intend to attempt to get that reinstated?
I would like to.
Any further questions from the board panel? Mr. Minton, do you have any further questions for this week?
Nothing further. Thank you.
At this time, we will move to closing statements. Council.
Thank you. I'll just be very brief. It's undisputed by the evidence as well as the testimony today from this night that the allegations of the Mississippi Board of Nursing that she is subject to the loss of privileges in another state is true. We have the document here. We have her statements that she received it and failed to appeal it. Therefore, it is a standing order in the state of Arkansas. That alone is grounds for suspension of her nursing privileges in Mississippi. But we also have heard from her today that she doesn't have quite an understanding of what her duties are as a traveling nurse. The document that controlled her employment under Medical Solutions and her placement in the Arkansas hospital indicated that she was required to follow the policies of that client. Now, we don't have those policies in front of us, and I'm no nurse, but I know this board is, and y'all know what those policies require. Those policies sometimes require agreeing to a drug screen if there's reasonable suspicion of use. And she chose not to do that, falling back on this excuse of, I assumed that only Medical Solutions could give me a drug screen. Well, Medical Solutions is in Nebraska. Any time period in which to get the point of a reasonable drug screen, reasonable suspicion drug screen is to go right then, not hours later when something might have a chance to get out of one's system. That is an irrational explanation and policy of her employer, Medical Solutions, if it in fact was their policy. We have nothing to indicate but her assumption, and a recruiter, which she testified had not been there that long, telling her, just hold up, just hold up. So what I would qualify as her defense or some sort of mitigating factor in this suspension in Arkansas just doesn't hold water. It may be what she believes, it may be the truth as she believes it, but it doesn't pass the smell test. So I would ask this board today, consider the facts. She is under a suspension in Arkansas. That is grounds for suspension in Mississippi. Also, refusing a reasonable drug screen is grounds for suspension in Mississippi as well. And she has admitted that she in fact did. She did in fact refuse a reasonable suspicion drug screen. She has provided what she believes to be mitigation as to why. I thought I had to wait. I thought only Medical Solutions could give me a facility that they chose could give me a drug screen, not my client. But her consulting agreement seems to suggest otherwise. Therefore, we're requesting that this subpanel of the Mississippi Nursing Board find that she has in fact violated the applicable statute and that she is subject to suspension and a suspension be issued. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, you have a closing statement to make it at this time.
I'm not guilty of what they said happened. It's false accusations. Now, I did not take the actual facilities drug screen, and I waited for instruction from my employer. But that's what, I mean, I don't know what else to say. But then I did not, these things that they're accusing me of did not happen. other than me leaving the floor to wait to hear back from my recruiter for further instructions, which I did for 4 hours in the parking garage. But because I left the floor, that they said that was a refusal. So
All right, thank you, Ms. Knight. At this time, entertain a motion regarding whether executive session is necessary. Yes, ma'am.
I move that the board go into closed session to determine if an executive session is necessary.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. I entertain a motion for the board to exit to executive session for deliberation on license number R 873-958.
I move that the panel go into executive session to consider a license of Amber Knight R 873-958.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. The board is now exiting to executive session. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We are back on the record. Entertain a motion for the board panel to return to regular session.
I moved that the panel return to regular session.
A second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We are back in regular session. The board panel, following deliberation on license number R 873958, renders the following. The license is revoked. A copy of this order will be forwarded to the licensee within 30 to 45 days. Are there any questions?
Sir.
So my license, I'm no longer allowed to work in the state of Mississippi as an RN.
That was the decision of the board panel.
Okay,
You will receive a copy of that order in 30 to 45 days. What address would you like that forwarded to?
the one listed should be
The one that we have on
222
file?
Charlie Sanford Road, Seminary 39479.
Sorry, give it to him one more time.
222 Charlie Sanford Road, Seminary, Mississippi 39479.
Thank you so much.
Mm.
Anything further?
Not on this matter. No.
All right, Ms. Knight, you're excused.
What do I need to do to appeal this?
It will be indicated in the order that you receive.
Okay. Okay, so, but from this day, I'm not allowed to work in Mississippi as an RN.
It'll actually be effective once you receive the order.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just gonna put it on the record. Thank you. We actually had another matter on the docket for the board panel to consider today. We actually did receive a continuance request from attorney Wayne Dowdy, who's representing the licensee, Melanie Southard. So that matter will be scheduled for a later date. Council, do we have anything further?
We have nothing.
With that being the case, it seems as though the board panel business for the day is concluded.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your participation.